As you can see, I've opened up this image into the develop module. You can see the exposure was largely made for the lower half, the lower 2/3, probably to be more accurate. So we're losing some detail in the sky, but we can see a little bit of shading there. So there's obviously some detail that we can bring through. Now what we may think of doing here would be to use a graduated filter. Let me select the graduated filter and drag it down. Now I can make adjustments in the exposure, but the problem when we start to use this tool is that it often encroaches onto the tops of the content within the image, which is a pretty good giveaway that image editing has been done. What we really need is to be much tighter around the edge. Well, let me hit the delete key to remove that graduated filter. Let's try a new approach. I'm going to select my adjustment brush from the right hand side, scroll down to the options for the brush. I'm going to adjust the size of the brush with the square bracket keys to the right of the letter P. But coming back to the options, the feather I'm going to leave it fully off, and the flow I'm going to push up to its maximum, and I'm ticking the box called Auto Mask. Now what we're going to do here is to bring in some tone into that sky, but we can use the automatic setting of Auto Mask to help us. Now I'm going to need to bring a little bit of exposure down so I can see exactly what we're doing when we start the masking process. And I'll start at this point at the top of the roof and we'll move to the right. To do that, I think we need the image enlarged, so we'll get ourselves reasonably well positioned. So there's my brush. I'm going to position my brush right on the edge, and if I draw down, the reason the brush is hugging the edge of that roof is not through my skill, because you may have noticed I dipped down there a little bit. The software is being able to recognize the difference in contrast and color between the sky and the roof, therefore helping us to mask around areas such as this. Now let me move that selection along a little bit, and we'll pick up the next part, because there is another option. We can make the brush slightly smaller. If it overspills, we can adjust the brush, keep the cross just about there, but as I said a few moments ago, if I click and drag, it's the software that's hugging the edge. But maybe there's another technique we can use alongside the auto mask. If I click in that position there, hold the shift key and move right to the end, I can paint between two straight lines. Now I'm using a graphics tablet, and I think my graphics tablet is applying pressure sensitivity, and that's why I'm getting a slightly different look here than we did back here. But of course, if I hold the shift key and go back to the start and click again, I can just build up the intensity of my mask to its maximum with a couple of strokes. Pretty easy to go along the entire roof line. Let's move along a little bit more just to demonstrate just a little bit. We'll choose this part here. I call this my shift click method. So click, hold the shift key, click, click, then come back and back, and if you have to go over it a couple of times, as you can see, no problem at all. Now I'm going to spend just a couple of seconds finishing off around the edge of the building, but once I've done that, of course, then I can make my brush much bigger, and I can quickly flood in the inside edge, and as I get further away from this edge, I can make my brush bigger and bigger and bigger, so it's quite quick to mask all of that sky tight to the rooftops. Now what will happen if we make a mistake while we're doing this masking, as I've done here deliberately? Well, you can see the little plus alongside the brush. If I hold my Alt key, you can see it changes to a minus, and I can just take away the problem area as easy as that. If you go down here, you can see you've got an erase option, because we can use two different types of brushes, but here I think it's much more convenient to just touch the Alt key to remove any slight overspill areas if we have any. Now what I've also found is the auto mask is great for going around edges such as this, but once we've got the edge in from one side to the other, to fill in the area at the top we can make the brush a lot bigger, and it works a little smoother if you then untick the auto mask. But as you can see, we've got the whole of the sky masked. I think we've probably got a little too much exposure in there, so let's go back up and look at what we may be able to do now we've got the mask in place. And you can see the pin right on the apex of the building on the left where we started the process. What it may be interesting to do is to double click the exposure to set it back to where we started from, and now we can just bring it down a little bit because I think that is a lot more natural. But I think we may also just use the temperature a little bit just to warm the clouds, and can you see we just seem to have a reasonable balance now between the tones within the image and also the sky that we've darkened using that auto mask. To finish the image off, I've added a radial filter just to darken the edges and the corners, but the majority of the work we needed to do was helped along with the auto mask.